So a warm welcome to everyone. Welcome Pete Bampton. Welcome Yuta, Sandro, Joao, Lawrence, and those of you that couldn't make it and looking forward to the replay. This is the Shiva and Shakti Temple Talks in the run-up to a beautiful retreat I've been invited to collaborate on with Pete Bampton, the founder of Fire of the Heart. Is that right, Pete? Said it right?
That's right.
And
yeah.
author of the book with the same title. And I'm currently in the Algarve, Portugal, where this retreat that we're running over Easter, the sacred dance of Shiva and Shakti, will be held. And I've been sharing a few pictures with Pete about the absolute stunning beauty that our retreat will take place within. I'm pink from the beach in February, where I was doing some research on the beach and enjoying myself. And now I'm running a retreat in relational bodywork. So relational bodywork is my passion. I'll be bringing that to the retreat. And this evening we offer to share with you the practice of community body poem. And then Pete will be going into the 3 dimensions, stages, levels.
Three stages of intimate relationship.
3 stages of intimate relationship. And I'll be offering some reflections from the perspective of growth, healing, and transformation using relational approaches, which we'll explain later, come from a few different traditions. And the logo here is one of my passions, and integrating eros, they call it. And that's using the power of integration that eros gives us, constantly seeking, perhaps never, always dancing around the golden mean. But nature oscillates around this striving for fusion and merging and union and dissolving into each other, but perhaps never quite reaches it. Otherwise, where would the fun be? So integrating eros, I love this concept that we can surrender into the integrating power of eros, and we can also integrate eros in our lives consciously as a vehicle for awakening, healing, connecting, and living a more satisfying life. So that's why that's there. And it's the brand through which I would say I'm meeting Pete and his Fire of the Heart. Though I'm here on a retreat teaching relational bodywork, which involves body poem and other modalities. So I offer this for us to land in the present moment and in our world of sensation through this community body poem. It'll take 7 to 10 minutes. I'll make sure it's not a long one. We can do much longer ones, and on one of the calls we did a much longer one. But today we've got a plan to hand back over to Pete. So I would invite you to down-regulate the nervous system to begin. And we can do this by supporting our back, leaning against something. This tells the nervous system that we're not doing, we're more in rest and digest or receiving mode. And we can just ride with that down into the body. So we lean into hopefully some back support that we might find around, or create, or sit on a chair or lean against the wall. And then feeling the support of the wall, I invite you to follow the natural impulse to sink, relax, soften. And another thing that can support us in this is gravity. So how would it be? Can you feel safe enough? And how would it be to lend some support from gravity that's always hugging us to Mother Earth, and just letting the muscles or any holding in the muscle drop into gravity, with gravity, down to the earth. And if we can imagine our muscles and our tissues peeling away from the bone, that with our mindful intent through the day, we're carrying certain tensions to get stuff done, get shit done. And in this moment, we invite the body to enjoy gravity for a while, enjoy the effect of gravity on our muscles, on our bones. And I invite you to feel for the soft tissue moving as we breathe around our bony structure. So we've got our support, we've got gravity hugging our bones and the muscles from the bones. Can we surrender into this gravitational pull? And then notice the aliveness in the body, our biodynamic wellness, the life force expressing through our breath, the breath creating a wave, and that wave creating movement. How far away from our belly button can we feel the movement of the breath? Can we feel some movement in our head, in our arms? Can we feel something in our pelvic floor, in our thighs? Can we even feel the touches and reaches of the wave of the breath in our feet and the top of our head? And knowing as we breathe the life force, the prana, the chi, the oxygen is leaping from this air into our blood as we breathe and reaching the tip of our head and the tips of our toes. And the carbon dioxide is leaping out of our blood into the air in the alveoli and back out as we breathe with no effort at all. So we're exchanging with our environment. We're in alchemy with our surroundings. We're feeding the plants and trees with our carbon dioxide. They're breathing our out breath in as we breathe their out breath in. And we smile to the trees and all the life force on planet Earth and her beautiful watery intelligence. And we smile to the beautiful watery intelligence within. And we feel for what's alive in us. What's alive in you in this moment? Could be a sensation, could be a thought, an emotion. I invite you to unmute yourself and just speak what you're noticing in your awareness in this inner world of you. Or if you prefer, you can type it in the chat. And this way our bodies meet through our emotional tone or our sensation. And we become one body of cells, these 6 cells in this zoomy liquid container of our liquid crystal displays. Peace, fire. I also feel peace, Sandro. Yuta feels fire. Fiery Shakti. Peace, peace, fire. Any other noticings as you turn your intention inward?
I was going to say heaviness.
Radical happiness?
No, heaviness.
Heaviness. Heaviness, peace, fire, peace. Double peace. Earth, heaviness, fire, peace. Curious. fire, moving water, curious earth, peace, fire, earth, heaviness, moving water, fire, moving water, curious, peace, heaviness, earth, fire, moving water, curious, peace, earth, heaviness, slow burn, excitement, fire, slow burn, excitement, curious, peace, earth, heaviness, moving water, fire. Infinity, falling, slow burn, letting go, peace, fire, letting go, moving water, excitement, fire, excitement, infinity, slow burn, earth, heaviness, peace, letting go, infinity, letting go, heaviness, letting go, fire, moving water, excitement, surrender, surrender, peace, slow burn, letting go, surrender, falling, infinity, excitement, curious, moving water, fire, slow burn, earth, peace, all are one. Fire, moving water, slow burn, excitement, curious, heaviness, letting go, surrender, deep beauty, all are one. Deep beauty, excitement, slow burn, deep beauty, moving water, deep beauty, earth, deep beauty, fire, deep beauty, peace, deep beauty, all are one, letting go, infinity, falling, surrender, letting go, all are one, deep beauty, all are one. Thank you for sharing, everyone. So we meet in sensation, we meet in our inner landscapes, and I'd like to hand over to Pete to share something on the 3 levels of intimate relationship.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to really connect what I want to share with the meditation and the expansion that we're in together now and that we just described. So what I'm calling these 3 stages of relationship, and they're generalizations, but I think it can help to indicate to us from which level of depth and authenticity we are relating to another. And that can be another just in terms of a friendship, but also particularly in the dimension of an intimate relationship or an intimate sexual relationship. And the way I'd like us to try and visualize this is of 3 spheres. Instead of it being 3 stages, one on top of the other, we can visualize it as 3 spheres, and perhaps get in touch with expansion of being, as we the expansion or contraction of being as we go through these. So this first stage is really the stage that most people are living at, and which we could call just an unconscious or awakened stage of being and relating. And so a simple way to define that stage is that energetically, in terms of my sense of myself, I feel that I am this body and this mind and this historical personality. And I am my patterns. So, of course, all kinds of emotions, thoughts, triggers are arising, and I am that. So one way to define an unawakened or unillumined human being is that there's no space between my experience and myself. So in that context, we often get what tends to play out in relationships is there's often a strong polarity in these relationships, because the women, this is a big generalization, but women tend to be more identified with the surface layer of themselves in terms of the embodied being. So women might have that shine. You know, they might know how to be sexual. They might know how to attract the attention of the man. And the men might tend to be more, on the one side, the sort of macho jerk kind of type, but also if they have a self-confidence, it's to do with their success, their status. So a simple way to put it is the women often tend to be sex objects, the men tend to be success objects. And there's this sense of needing the other, wanting to find another. I'm obviously mainly talking about it in the context of emotional sexual relationships now, but needing the other to feel complete. So the two poles are coming together, but you don't really have what we could call the Shiva and Shakti principle really alive, because the man and the woman in this case, or it could also be in the context of a gay relationship, but we'll always find that there's some kind of attractive polarity. And it's in the first stage, it's just that experienced as being the body and the mind. So as a result of that, there tends to be a lot of reactivity, a lot of drama, a lot of often conflict. And, you know, we can all, even for those of us who might experience ourselves to be more conscious and more awakened than that, we can all recognize that when we fall into first stage moments, you know, so, and again, this can be in the context of any kind of intimate relationship, when somehow you're triggered, there's some wound, there's some conditioned pattern, some kind of pain body that's triggered, and you immediately, your attention and your energy contracts. There's fear, there's avoidance of relationship, there's the two polarities, you know, pulling apart. So whenever we fall down into our conditioned and egoic patterns, and as a result we experience separation, reactivity, a loss of love as the ground of our being, we're falling into what we could call as first stage moment or consciousness. So that's the first circle. So and the inner circle represents, as I said, more that sense of, well, who I am is this body, mind, this personality. There's nothing much beyond it. Yeah, another aspect to this is that when we're only in this kind of unconscious, reactive first stage of development, we're very much conditioned by how we were brought up as children, how we needed to protect ourselves, as children, all of the defense mechanisms that we needed, as we were growing up. But we have not yet come into a mature, integrated adulthood such that we can really grow beyond these patterns, or we're not yet interested in doing that. So second stage is I would say the stage, so this is the next concentric circle. I would say this is the stage where most alternative, educated, sensitive, postmodern people, especially in the Western world, are. And in this stage, there's much more self-awareness in terms of one's patterning, of one's reactivity. And so instead of a kind of, polarity in which, there might be strong attraction, but then also one's patterns are smashing up against each other, there's more this sense of being two independent beings. And we rub up against each other, but we want to understand, we want to have compassion, we want to work our way through to some kind of basis in which we can experience a consistent degree of love and harmony. So it's really got a lot to do with communication. So if you're in a second stage relationship, and say you're being triggered, or say there's some reactivity, instead of just being that reaction, there'll be some self-awareness of like, oh, why are you reacting so much? Or did this hurt you? Let's talk about it. So there's a way in which we can come together in a kind of deeper and more intimate communication. And yeah, it's a way in which we can invite each other to step out of our patterning. So when I was mentioning this concept of the 3 stages to Julian the other day, he brought up nonviolent communication, and that's really a modality that's representative of this second stage, because it's all about, well, as it says, non-violent communication. So first stage can tend to get, well, violent would be the extreme, but very reactive. So the principles of non-violent communication are very much like, what are the needs behind your wound, behind your pain? What's really going on behind the reactive emotion, behind this whatever is being triggered. So at its best, the second stage relationship, it becomes one in which we respect each other very deeply. There's compassion for each other's weaknesses and for each other's conditioned patterning, and there's a sense usually of a kind of equality in the relationship. And this also relates to polarity and to what we could call the postmodern cultural context, where egalitarianism and the sense that we're equal, and also as men and women we're equal, is highly valued. Yeah, for example, I think again, these are all generalizations. While in the second stage relationships, there's obviously a lot more understanding, harmony, and compassion, and in that sense, love. What often is lacking is polarity, is a living, dynamic, vibrant polarity. One of the things that often happens is that the men become more feminized in some way, because they feel that they need to become more sensitive and emotionally literate, and the women often become more masculinized. And there can be many reasons for that, but also we can't underestimate the influence of feminism in progressive culture. And of course, there's broadly very positive impacts from that. but it's also very much about women being equal to men in a man's world. So we've all heard about toxic masculinity. I think we're probably all aware that there seems to be a war in many ways on masculinity, and a presumption that many of the qualities of what it might mean to be a man are regressive. So as a result of that, a lot of us men are often very confused and insecure about what it actually means to be a man in our time. And I think a lot of women in this stage, while society and the culture at large might be telling them that they're getting much more of what they wanted, obviously compared to the first stage, and they have more of a sense of equality. I think also more and more these days, many women are feeling there's something more. There's also something beyond this, as good as it might be compared to the first stage. So that brings me to the third stage, and I don't want to say too much about that because it's a living edge. It's very unknown. It's relatively undiscovered in our time. I think those of us who are interested in whatever the higher and deeper potentials of relating and intimacy are, this is what we're leaning into. But what it does mean is that we want more. We want more than just harmony. We want more than just a sense of fundamental equality. We want fire. We want freedom. We want spontaneity. We want our relationship to, again, thinking of it as the widest circle, interpenetrating with infinity. We want our love, we want our relationship to be sourced in the one being, the one heart, the one sacred fire, you could say, that we all are, and that we both are. And in this context, as Shiva and Shakti. So in my experience and understanding, it's really when we start to make the transition from the second stage into what I'm calling the third stage, is when we start to go beyond self. We start to go beyond the presumption of fundamental limitation. And also it means we start to go beyond fear. You start to go beyond fear, because fear is really the biggest barrier to freedom and to ecstasy and to complete spontaneous, unbridled commitment to love and loving. And one thing I was talking with my partner about last night was the whole subject of commitment, and how so many men in particular fear commitment. Why? Because we fear that we're going to lose our freedom. And I think many women are longing for that kind of commitment from a man. But often what holds women back is perhaps the ways in which they've been betrayed or disappointed in the past. There can be many reasons, but for women usually have their fear around truly completely opening themselves and being an open invitation to man, or the Shiva principle. And for a man, the fear is usually to do with surrendering himself completely to that Shakti principle. So this third stage potential, as I'm trying to articulate, it's a profound leap of trust and of surrender, and it's definitely not politically correct. So it's not about trying to maintain any kind of role or condition or strategy. We can allow ourselves to be spontaneous. We mentioned when we were talking about Larry in the dark there, Julian mentioned the dark masculine. So what is the dark masculine? It's all of those dimensions of masculinity that have generally been denied and are seen as not politically correct in the second stage. And of course, the fear for us of men is if we allow ourselves to bring online our dark masculine, our deep, dark, primal energy, that we will regress into some form of domination that could potentially lead to violence and all the rest of it. And of course, women have their own fear of what we could call the dark masculine, because we know what that can do when it's not conscious. But at the same time, I think that many women are longing for that, because the Shakti principle wants to be open to God, wants to be ravished, wants to be taken, wants to be loved, such that the self in her, the seed of anxiety in her, the seed of any kind of fear is melted and burned out. And it's my experience that it's only when a woman, or the Shakti principle, or only when a woman is truly able to relax and trust completely, that the Shakti principle itself, so when I say Shakti principle, I'm talking about this fundamental feminine essence, can really begin to shine and inhabit on a cellular level the being of the woman. So it's really a stage in which for the man, for Shiva, the woman, or Shakti, becomes the portal to his freedom, right? And that's one way to understand what Tantra is all about, because what does Tantra fundamentally mean? It means the weave of the masculine and the feminine, the weave of pure presence and form. And so it means for a man, we have to go beyond all of our fears of losing ourselves in this deep commitment to love. But the paradoxical discovery is that we find that through being completely one-pointedly devoted to loving and serving the Shakti principle, that we discover a love and a freedom that is magnified to all beings, right? So in the second stage, you might get these relatively good relationships, harmonious, we're evolving together, but there's usually still a sense of some kind of limit, of some kind of safety. And in the third stage, the potential is that you're so surrendered to this dynamic, you don't really know what it is, you don't know where it's taking you. There's always a sense of ever newness, right? You might get to know each other very, very, very more and more over time, but the familiarity never deadens the living flame of this love, this bliss that comes into being when Shiva and Shakti come together, free from fear. So I hope that gives a sense of what I wanted to bring. Yeah, I just put here in my notes, the tantric path equals freedom through the feminine. And I feel that for a woman, or the Shakti principle, it's surrendering to the feminine, or the Shakti principle, as herself, and then all things come to her. You see, the feminine doesn't really want to be trying to be like a man in a man's world and asserting herself and making it happen. You see, the feminine is the receptive principle. She's like a magnet. If the feminine really deeply can let go and trust in her own nature, which is not about competing in a man's world, it's not about trying to be equal to men, then she becomes a living magnet. And everything she longs for and yearns for will come to her. That's how I think it works.
Thank you, Pete, for sharing. So I'd like to open to others to respond. Has anybody got, I've got a few things I'd love to share back into the mix. Yeah, so the context of this retreat, Pete, and when we spoke the other day, was saying we were actually, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, whether I said to you about nonviolent communication, and then it reminded me of my love for it, for helping couples. And I'm here, I did a couples retreat before the group retreat, and we worked very much with nonviolent communication. So that was yesterday. So I think it was after we had our chat. And in that system, I see it very much like also the wheel of consent, which I want to bring on the retreat in over Easter with you in Mariposa. So yeah, the retreat, we will be bringing these themes, and Pete will be giving inquiries, presentations, meditations. We'll be sharing qigong and practical exercises, which I will also bring in inquiry in an embodied way. How do we inquire what's true for us? How do we feel into these dynamics individually, in pairs or triads, and collectively in group inquiry through tools like body poem at the beginning of this. And Peter and I have invited a friend to next week's call, Peter Littlejohn Cook. We've both known him many years. He's a dear friend of us both. And he'll be reflecting something that will be a follow-on from today's call about what is a true tantric practice. And I can share as a little hint to next week from my memory of his retreats that I've attended, that if a practice isn't deeply reverent of the Shakti principle or the feminine, it's not truly tantric. So we could say women are suffering from trying to be more assertive, as you say, in a man's world. But to a degree, we can decide what world we live in, despite the predominant culture. And I think the same is true of men in your examples, thinking they'll lose their freedom by commitment. And I think, sadly, many men, myself included, at times in the past, and may happen again, you know, we can be misguided, and we don't have good role models of the healthy masculine, because our culture worships the powerful. It worships power over structures. You know, at the end of most Hollywood movies ends in some violence where the good guy wins over the bad guy. But as we know, in many different cultures and countries, one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. So these are all labels giving positive or negative meaning to the actions, which might include violent action. So one of the beautiful lessons from nonviolent communication is that we have 4 friends: anger, depression, guilt, and shame. And that can sound quite callous and discompassionate to say, well, you know, they're our friends. But in that level 2 that's Pete's talking about, and certainly moving into a level 3, if we feel depression, guilt, shame, or anger rising up in our system, if we have the wherewithal to pause and, as Pete said, create space between that I am, this emotion. Because if we're talking about anger and I'm right, anger is always justifying violence and separation and criticism and othering. We mentioned on another of these calls, if I see you different to me because you've got long hair, and, you know, I lost my hair and I might inside have an issue about hair, and I'm like, well, you long-haired hippie, or, you know, whatever. I like long hair. I would love long hair. That's my truth, you know, but it could be an issue. It used to be an issue for me. Now I'm completely okay with my hair as it is. So that kind of othering, which we can see any kind of enemy image, any difference. Well, you live in a house like that, and I live in a house like this, so you've got more money than me. Those can be reasons for separation. And when we see you're different from me, then we come out of this all oneness, which we shared in someone shared, oh, it was you, or alone, all one, or we are all one. That feeling that certainly is indicative, it seems, of level 3, is interrupted by the drama of level 1, separation, and seeing you're different than me, therefore there's fear, because if you're different than me, there could be a threat. And for many people living in the world, there is threat, there is wars, there's lots of drama and terrible things going on. So in a relationship, in an intimate relationship, how can we speak peace? Marshall, I've met him in person when he was alive, gave a beautiful presentation in London. And he told us that night that he has 2 ways into the material. One is to teach you the dynamics of nonviolent communication, which he said is not named. After it became famous, he thought, oh, bugger. It should have become compassionate. Like, let's not define something by what it's not, which is non-violent. Yeah, and he said it's too late now. It's known throughout the world as non-violent communication. But he had a CD set called Speaking Peace, and it had an arrow turning into a white rose. Beautiful. And he had a giraffe language, and he had giraffe schools and restorative justice programs, which are still running throughout the world, which don't ask, okay, what did person A do to person B? How bad was what person A did to person B? Oh, pretty bad. So we need to punish person A quite a lot because, so that's retributive justice, eye for an eye. And as Gandhi said, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. So instead, the question in restorative justice is, what's happened? What danger is this individual to themselves or the community? And what needs to happen to restore safety? For me, a much better question. So in our intimate relationships, if we see that we are justified in our anger because our partner has done X, Y, and Z, then we feel justification for violence. And if these 4 things, anger, depression, guilt, and shame, are our friends, well, how so? How are they friendly? Do we want to feel anger, depression, guilt, and shame? Probably not. So how can we catch them in our system and move from a level 2 that you're describing into a level 3? So that's the practice, and that's what we were exploring in the couples retreat yesterday. It was just a 1-day immersion, but I'm working with this couple regularly over time. So that was the inquiry. And so, well, we have these 4 things. We were focusing on anger, and we did what I call mapping. I like all kinds of mapping. So we were mapping anger that stirred up in the Shiva pole of this relationship, the embodied man. And what I realized quickly, that I'd written that at the top of the piece of paper, was we're actually needs mapping, because behind, as Pete said, behind the anger is an unmet need. And criticism, attack, or violence, one country to another, war, is a tragic, so these words I think are absolute gold, a tragic, suicidal expression of an unmet need. So if one country or one partner, woman or masculine, female, gay, trans, whatever identification you are, these polarities play out as drama in relationship, because I see you different than me. I'm angry. I'm unconscious of a need that I have that I'm not even aware of. And because you're not meeting it, I'm angry with you. And therefore, my anger, because I think it's charged largely to the fact that the need is unconscious. So we just have this powerful energy. Oh, I'm angry. So I take it out on you. And that justifies the violence. In the Hollywood movie, if we go back to that, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, whoever it is, decks the bad guy because he's right and the other guy's wrong. So we can see that we've had a glorification of violence and good triumphing over evil, and this dualistic dynamic, which Marshall Rosenberg comes back 10,000 years from mythology. And he believed that it's the human level invented evil and invented separation and stories that affirm that separation between good and evil. And then we have religions that back up that our God's the real God. Anyway, we don't need to go into religion, but there's many reasons, religion aside, for justifying violence because we're right. And Marshall said there can be, if we want a peaceful world, there can be no justification for violence. We can understand anger. We can say it's our friend. Okay, anger rises up on me. What's my unmet need? Do I have to hold ransom my partner to get that need met and blame them for my unmet need? No, I can take responsibility. I can say, oh, I have a need for intimacy. I might even have an unconscious need for sexual release. Well, if we have 4 limbs, we can probably take care of our need for sexual release. And there are far more options of what we can do with that physiological perceived need that we haven't worked with, which Tantra offers a lot that we can do with sexual energy in terms of sublimating it, channeling it into creativity, sharing it with your partner, doing self-love practices that are far more conscious than just tension release. So yeah, we worked yesterday with anger being a friend, mapping the needs that the individuals had that had resulted in anger. The anger was the vehicle, but it was a tragic, suicidal expression of an unmet need. I had them spooning whilst they shared and mapped their needs in complete intimacy, connection, and cuddling, and then got one partner to share to the other needs that they had perceived had not been met in certain circumstances and moments. And the melting, the forgiveness, and the transformation that took place was powerful. So Marshall did this with massacres in populations, war zones, and was amazing. So when you learn to grief the unmet need. So an example here, if you're a parent and you have a child and it runs out into a busy street, you go, oh my gosh, and you grab your child back because you fear for their life. Some parents might smack that child. Don't you ever do that again. The road is dangerous. So what need do we think they were trying to protect that child from? Is there the need for protection of their child? And then is smacking a child fulfilling the need of protection? Absolutely not. So there's a pain in it. There's a karmic charge in that action, you know, but we can forgive ourselves if we say, well, what need was I trying to achieve through hitting my child? Well, I wanted to impress upon them the danger, and I wanted to save them from this imminent danger with the traffic. Okay, and what need was why do I feel bad? Where's the pain in this? Oh God, because I don't want to hit my child. I've got a need to protect, and oh my God, it's the same need. And we're like, wow, in the moment, I overrode my own need with an action and a strategy, which was tragic and suicidal, because it guaranteed that I'm not going to meet my need for protecting my child, because in that moment, I'm going to hit them. And I didn't want to do that. So many times, the very need that we're trying to serve, we end up, in some cases, and many times, actually crashing through with some reaction rather than a response. And the times where you get down at eye level and explain to the child with concern on your face, hey, you nearly got hit by a car. That really scared me. I really care for your, even little kids, if we show the concern and connect with them at eye level, we probably, I would argue, do not need to smack our children in most cases, So, but then going back to the society that we live in and Pete's description of masculine and feminine polarity, I think the freedom that men are scared to lose through commitment is because they don't know another type of freedom other than non-coupled commitment. I also don't want to criticize polyamory, but I have many friends in the circles of sacred sexuality that I've been exploring for many years that are pursuing that kind of lifestyle and relationship choice. And for some of them, I see what I see and what I've heard from others is that they seem to be sparked and excited by different aspects of themselves that come into relationship through different partners. But I've seen a lot of pain and sadness and horizontality. Oh, yes, it's interesting. These different people, their different interests, their different bodies, the different things we can get up to, and the different experiences we can have. And I spoke to a very conscious sex coach about this, and she said that you can describe that as sexual range. You might be into BDSM, Tantra, trance states, Shibari, cross-dressing, whatever, a whole range, like a sushi bar of different sexual experiences. And I'm not poo-pooing any of that. And then, like the tea ceremony in Japan, what if you picked one thing, one partner, and you went so deep with that partner because you forsake variety and horizontality for verticality, and you go deep like the well that we talked about in one of the other calls. You drop, surrender like the body poem, letting go. And in that self-surrendered freedom, Marshall Rosen, Philip Shepard wrote a book, Radical Wholeness. And he said, the American dream is self-achieved independence. He said, sadly, this is the fantasy of the tyrant. So I will consume and collect enough so that I am dominant over my environment. I can wall myself with cameras into my mansion with swimming pool. I can have servants, which I may be scared of because they might poison me or take my gold bullion in my safe or steal one of my fancy cars. And I forget who it is. One of the CEOs of one of the biggest companies lives in a darkened room in his mansion with security cameras everywhere and a private militia. And he has antibacterial wipes on a tray pushed under his door. And this is I forget who this is. Poor man. But he's achieved self-achieved independence. He's got more money than he could spend in 100 lifetimes. But is he happy? He's disconnected in a darkened room. I doubt he would consider himself happy, let alone anybody else's measure of happiness. So self-surrendered freedom often doesn't appeal to the notion of manhood's achievement, like the success badge that Pete spoke about. So it gets totally overlooked. And Pete runs men's groups. Some of the people on the call, I think, are part of them. I've been invited to facilitate potentially with Pete and another men's group facilitator to come to Portugal in February. And I think this men's work on what does it mean to be a man in 2024, and this inquiry of what does it mean to move from a conscious, co-created level 2 that you're talking about, into a felt sense of purpose. For me as a man, I think we all, man, woman, and all the range, if we find service and creativity through service. I did a podcast on integrating eros. None of them have been published yet, with my Kung Fu master. And he said, the purpose in life is not to learn how to love. We are love. And when we discover that we are love, death is irrelevant. So to me, the ultimate fear we have, as far as I can see it, apart from extreme suffering, is death and non-existence. So if we're so immersed in service and creativity and love, the notion of the death of our body dissolves, because we are love. We're merged into love. So I not only feel it's possible, I hope for more cases, and I'm training practitioners to support people. And I love in my practice when I can support men back into service. And just to close my share on the dark masculine, I had a client, and we mentioned a few weeks ago that his partner had willed him to embody the dark masculine. And he came to me saying, I've no idea what that might look like. And so we used some of the practices that we'll use on the retreat to inquire into how comfortable am I with taking, the Garden of Eden, the biblical story of Eve and Adam and the apple. if life fruits and blossoms and offers us opportunity, do we feel worthy to take that fruit? Do we feel it's forbidden? Do we feel we're not worthy of reaching out for what life is offering us? Can we, as men, talking about the Shiva principle that you're talking about, open to receive our own Shakti, our own receptivity? I find most of the men that I support are so driven in doing, they've forgotten the feminine pole of being. And the embodiment practices I was describing on the retreat today, if we have a very strong, overstrong mind, which most of us in Northern European Western culture have been schooled into the preoccupation of the mind and intellect, this is very active. We can rekindle our felt sense, our interoceptive awareness through body perm and many other practices. And then we're calling to the divine feminine, the Shakti principle in our pelvis and our hara, our belly, our dantian, and all the fascia and all the nerves that we can go into in more detail. And we're calling that feminine back to reach up, to tickle, to start to bond and fuse with this overemphasized masculine, and we can experience again a wholeness which births forth freedom, choice, authenticity, clarity. And for me, these are the matured aspects of manhood that if we saw more of in the world, with the gentle, the more power we have, the more gentle capacity we have for love. I'm in full support of more of that. So that's my response, Pete.
That's
love.
beautiful. Beautiful. Really about becoming a heart warrior.
Mm.
I love the way you were describing the weave. It was like the weave there.
Weaving. Here's the weave. Yeah. Yeah.
And the Shakti.
Definitely.
And
Yeah, thank you, guys. I was going to ask something, or just bring something that's come up speaking about, which is when you were speaking about this fear of commitment that men have, which I think is as a generalization quite common, and you know, just the transcendence of that, to be able to move into a place where that's not, where there's something different, something new, where that's not present. I was just reflecting back on my own experience, and I think one of the triggers for me often is when the woman is needy. When I feel like there's a neediness coming from the woman, that really triggers me from this perspective that you were talking about. Of then I push away. I don't want to go into that place of commitment because of And I know ultimately that's you know, insecurity from both perspectives, you could say, from my perspective and from the woman's perspective. And I'm not necessarily asking for any kind of, I just thought I'd share, you know, that just what came up for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. I also would like to share. I'm in the the opposite spectrum. I'm always eager to have a relationship. I'm the girl on the relationship. No, I'm eager to have a commitment, to have something stable. And my neediness pushes my partner away quite often, you know, so I'm the opposite. So I just like to share because it's like a different perspective on connections.
can you say a bit more? So you mentioned your partner, so this is a relationship you're in now?
Yeah, but I've been repeating that all my life, all my relationships. Even if I change my partner for a different one, I will do that. You know, due to my life experience, I think I'm always looking for something more stable. To have that type of connection. I don't know in which sphere I'm on. I'm between the first one and the third one, jumping, according to your description. Yeah. And I have some difficulties. I have a lot of feminine energy. When I use my masculine energy, it's always explosive, not in a way of violence, but when I get triggered, I get really triggered. Sometimes I can observe myself and see that I'm triggered, that I'm really upset with myself, not with her. But I enter the automatic, what is familiar for me, so I cannot easily leave that place of being triggered. Yeah.
What happens when you're triggered? What's the emotional content?
It's I feel rage, you know. I feel like I'm justice is not being served because I did this, I did that, and I'm not receiving from the other part. For me, I think a lot of men want connection. Normally, we say we just want sex, but what we really want is to be vulnerable and cuddling, spooning, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, this is common. Men think they want sex, but what they want is connection.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You reminded me, Sandro, what I didn't add there about these four friends: guilt, depression, anger, and shame. And what I think the problem of any model is that if we see the model as ideal, if we have anger and we have an outburst and we feel rage and we express rage, then we layer shame on top of the drama that we're in. So I do not, I've not gone, and I'm I really respect what I've learned from many teachers, and yet I've seen NVC, nonviolent communication, people kind of going into a spiritualized ego and judging each other for not catching the friend of the anger, and so I think it's a process, as Pete described, concentric circles rather than separate circles, and it's not that you leap from one to the other. And as Pete alluded to, I think there's those strategies that are intelligent. They might be level 1 strategies, but reverse psychology is very powerful. Tell a child not to have more than one cookie, they want to try and have more than one cookie. So I think some of our strategies, we can inquire as to how much they're serving us and how much they're not, and consciously let them go. But not to judge and to have shame when in difficult times we revert to strategies that in our early development meant that we were able to neutralize or minimize the emotional cost. And one of those is falling out of belonging. So in a relationship, you're saying you like steady, you want to belong. This is a deep human need. So I would say that can be present in all three. I've never thought in Pete's way of these three stages of relationship, but you've probably all heard of attachment styles. So there's a secure attachment style. I haven't studied them in depth, but your attachment style, there's also the love languages, I've heard, and there's erotic blueprints, and there's core erotic theme. I'm more familiar with establishing core erotic theme. Mine is that if I do anything, if I do a retreat with Pete Bampton, I want him to want the retreat as much as I do. If the other person's like, yeah, let's do it, I suppose, then I'm like, I will meet with that kind of energy. And I've learned that I will back off, because I'm like, well, if they don't want it as much as me, I'm not putting my energy in there. So if I'm in a relationship, friendship or otherwise, and I like offer something, and they ghost me on Telegram or whatever, I'll be like, okay, let them go, because I want to free them. I don't want to obligate them through. So I could see for you in a steady relationship desire, that could be present in all three. And actually what Pete's pointing to for deepening, it would be great to offer, so one way of looking at it is I I want stability of commitment from my female partner in your case. And another one is to look at it that I offer, this is a gift, I offer in my relationships, I love to celebrate and share commitment and stability and steadiness as a beautiful thing. And therefore you turn it into a gift that you're willing to bring to the relationship rather than a need that they need to fulfill in you.
Yeah.
So that's one other way to look at it. And then, you know, in my, when I know it's not personal to me, that most of us don't want to go to the cinema with someone who's not interested to see the movie. Where's the fun in that? So I know it's not unique to me, but it became very key when I did that inquiry that I want in all my relationships. I don't want to waste my life energy. I don't want to convince anybody of anything. I don't want to sell myself as worth spending time with. If people don't see that, then let them go. Let them be free to find the connections that will suit them best. So yeah, that's and then to speak to Lawrence, yeah, I've had experiences of coupled relationship where I've perceived the other as very needy, and as a practitioner, that through a challenge of I'm not their therapist, and obviously, as Lawrence, as you said, it speaks of insecurity, but you could also say that it speaks of a lack of willingness or capacity, a justified one, that, well, I'm not ready to help this person be less needy. It's not my role as a lover or a friend or a partner. And you feel the burden of, if it's a shape, we've been talking on this retreats about shapes that people make. So the couple with the inquiry around anger realized that because he had got angry and he wants intimacy, but he's scared that she will feel unsafe, it was safer for the Shakti to move towards and make intimate connection with the Shiva, who could then melt and be like, oh, thank God. Whereas
it's my technique when I want intimacy.
yeah.
I have to hold my energy and not be the one asking that, because that pushes the person away.
Yeah.
If I'm more masculine and on my own energy, and sometimes I pretend I don't want anything, any type of intimacy, I have the intimacy I desire. It's like a reversed psychology, but it's hard sometimes because we have our needs. We have to express our needs, but at the same time, as a man in this stage of the earth, when we express our needs, sometimes we push people away, you know, in a certain mode. Yeah.
Which is why I think, you know, in the Tao, they call it solo cultivation. There's obviously, we're all aware, but maybe not practicing or maybe not looked into it deeply, but there are things we can do with our own sexual energy, which for me free up and liberate a man, particularly, and women. There's both expressions in all genital configurations and types of people for sexual expression. It's one of play, eroticism's sexual expression is one of the mapped needs that Marshall, when he inquired all around the world in all different cultures, were common. So we can find each other's humanity when we connect on a needs level, and we can bridge the enemy image and the difference between man and woman, not in an egalitarian homogenization, but in a empathic heart connection, to say, okay, so you have these needs, and then we can supportively build strategy to get those needs met. So it doesn't have to be us that meets all the needs of our partner, and it doesn't have to be our partner that meets all the needs of us. And I think in this talk of Shiva Shakti and the perhaps common lack of awareness around habituated sexual intimacy. We tend to touch in very habituated ways, ourselves and our partners. We tend to go for the indirect route of pleasure. If we look at the wheel of consent work, the direct route of pleasure would be to, one direct route is to touch and to receive pleasure through our touch. And we did it on one of the calls, waking up the hands. We're just touching an object and we can open up to receive. And in the busyness of doing, we miss a lot of slowing down, presence, and pleasure through not slowing down and touching. And we can get a lot of intimacy that we identified on this retreat. We were saying the baseline of intimacy is this human connection, and to have touch skin to skin is so rich. It doesn't have to be wildly erotic sexual touch, but if we can connect with a partner where there's been a rupture of heart connection, to play with each other's hair. I haven't got any, but Pete has. Or hands, or a colleague of mine has a male sexual empowerment program. I'll plug her male sexual empowerment program that I helped her film. 19 days of filming we did with real live couples. We coached them in live intimacy, in Tao and tantric practices. And one of the exercises that she has in her program, SeanJohnson.com, is touching the face of the beloved. Oh my gosh, it moved the couples that we worked with to tears. So they're sat opposite each other. You close your eyes as if you're blind or not, and you reach out and you touch and trace the face of your beloved as if it were the face of the sacred Shiva or Shakti, or you know, and opening to receive, particularly for men, was radical for them. So there are beautiful, simple approaches which can bridge intimacy. And once we've reached that baseline of humming co-resonance, some of our perceived habituated strategies for penetrative sex calm, and our sexual energy naturally starts to move in different ways. So I feel there is hope.
I'm also into tantra, and I have good reviews about giving, according to my partner, but I have some difficulties receiving.
Yeah,
I feel pleasure when I'm touching her skin. For me, what I think it's more exciting in the human body, it's the skin, you know. The energy that we put, the energy that we receive. Penetration, of course, is also nice, interesting, but there's a big world besides that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. But I'm saying this, but at the same time, I don't feel completely good on receiving. I feel a certain shame, not of my body, not of my person, but it's something that is imprinted in my mind that I'm trying to get rid of. But I feel a certain difficulty on receiving. I feel I'm not worthy, so I prefer to be the one giving and controlling in some way.
Yeah. That, so
you know what? Can I just respond to that?
Yeah, of course,
Alexandra. What just struck me when you were describing that, just connecting it with what you said earlier about you tending to be the one wanting this security, and maybe there's some neediness that comes through and it pushes her away, and just linking that with what you were just saying about this difficulty of receiving, right? And of course for some people it's the other way, you know. I think often for women it's very much like that, because I think perhaps women in general more than men are conditioned to be the givers, you know, and to be serving. And so whether we're man or women, we often feel much more comfortable being, because giving equals being selfless, equals being egoless, equals good. But you know, receiving is usually equated, well, that's for me, you know, so there's all the negative messaging around that. But it's quite something, I think, when we're willing to give a green light to the fact that we're all longing to love and be loved. And I think it's one of the most tender and intimate and beautiful and melting things, you know, to be just willing to receive, you know, because I know for myself, you know, it's in a way, you know, I love to love my woman, you know, and there's a way in which there's something about my masculinity, you know, this Shiva principle that really starts to, you know, to flow in that modality. But then when I'm willing to inhabit more the feminine side, you could say, in myself, which would mean being willing to receive, you know, and maybe she would then quite naturally, this is all non-strategic, this is all like energies moving, you know, if the male pole is then willing to be in a posture of receptivity and allow oneself to receive, and it's not, and there's different levels to this, as Julian's so good at portraying, because that first of all, we've got to allow that, you say, on a mental level and make a choice. But then there's all the ways in which bodily and physically it might be challenging for us to just open to pleasure, to ecstasy, you know, and actually just be willing to receive. And then as we talked about on the other call recently, on the other side, being willing to take, you know,
both are very vulnerable.
Be willing. Yeah, this is actually bringing something out about the difference between the second and the third stage, because in the second stage, there's always the matter of relating, of being two beings, man, woman, saying, and ordinarily, of course, there's all the different varieties, but you know, we're in relationship, and it's like there's always that consciousness of I'm giving, receiving, she's receiving, you know. But I feel in the third stage, it's when we're willing to let go and trust to such a degree that we can trust that ground of care and love for our partner is already in place. And then we can let go into, like, maybe, you know, maybe I just receive and allow myself to be pleasured for an hour, 2 hours, and that, you know, and then we might find our psychophysical being opening up in ways that we just never allowed ourselves to experience before as a man, you know, and vice versa for a woman. And then just to connect this to emotions, because we were talking a lot about anger and shame earlier, I feel it's the same thing. It's like in the third stage, there's no negative emotions, right? So the energy of anger in and of itself, I like to make a distinction between anger and aggression, you know, because anger is just an energy. It's just an energy.
It rises in deep care. It rises in care. It's really rises in care, if we're honest. But aggression is disconnected from that care and moving into vengeance. And then we lose humanity, and then we're in a living hell. So that's the cascade. Yeah.
So then, for example, if, you know, anger's arising, or if when the needy woman, as you were describing, Larry, you know, because I know exactly, that's also been my experience. That's what I would start to feel, that lockdown on my freedom, or fear that it's going to be taken away. But then it's actually just getting to why are you afraid? You know, what is the anger about? And even allowing the space for that to be expressed, you know, because it allows this energy to release itself and to flow. So I feel like it's the fear around what we normally call reactive emotions. And again, it comes back to this deepening trust, because there's a fear. Well, if you know, we can't allow anger to fully express itself because it's going to break the harmony, you know, the connection. But if there's such a deep trust, and it's like we know that we're both committed to staying in the circle, in the ring together, then we can experiment in these ways and allow ourselves to maybe express emotions that we wouldn't normally express, and also to open up to giving and receiving and taking, and to the dark masculine and whatever Kali would be for the feminine, just to experiment and allow ourselves to step into different modes of being that are just usually not allowed. They're most of us are living within this very narrow spectrum of what's, right and true and good to feel and to express. So it also has a lot to do with to take risk.
Cool.
Anyway, I said quite a lot there. I hope some of it is.
I just feel we're a couple of minutes before the end, so I felt we could do a closing body poem, a very brief one. Pause for a moment. I'd just like to add to what Pete shared there a couple of things. The feminine pole of all of us is, and we said in another call, exquisitely good at feeling the felt relationship between all things, the harmony, but also the discord or the lack of congruence. So if as men we're saying one thing and doing something else, that is felt very vividly in our own feminine pole of our being, if we're honest and drop there. And it's felt very vividly if we're in a heteronormative relationship by our female partner. So I just wanted to mention that our own moral compass or our own orientation towards being in alignment can embrace a dynamic dance of the Shiva and Shakti within us as an individual. And that shame is perhaps one of the largest interruptions for pleasure. If we feel that our genitals or our desire is wrong, bad, dirty, or shameful, this is the biggest shutdown on pleasure. And for a lot of men that I coach around transcending habituated self-pleasure, porn use, and patterns with the opposite sex or whoever their partner is, it's around that. So the order of the people on the screen just changed because JP put his hand up, so it's just thrown me. I've lost my train of thought. But your question's welcome, JP. Yes, and then there was the thing. Very interesting what Pete highlighted there, Sandro, around you feeling that you've got this neediness, but Pete identified there that then you find it difficult to receive. So I just wanted to re-highlight that with love and say, hey, wow, so you have a pattern where that you identify as needy and that it could push some women and partners away. And then if that partner or life is wanting to give to you, you find it difficult to receive, as you said, linking it to worthiness and am I worth their time and energy? That kind of story. And I wanted to draw connection to what we're going to do on the retreat, which is take apart giving and receiving with an inquiry. So I think a lot of true spiritual inquiry helps us to distance, create space and conscious awareness between, and react less and respond more. And one of the practices that does that takes apart giving and receiving and asks who's doing and who's it for. And the one that would be typically called a receiver is called in accepting. And accepting, if you're delivered a parcel, if I send you an Amazon gift and it arrives at your house, Sandra, and you open the door and the delivery guy's there, and you see it's a really, and you've said, oh, I want a guitar. Julian, I would love a guitar. And I say, oh, I'll send you a guitar. And then you see this tiny package and you think, oh, he's got me a ukulele. I asked for a guitar. I better send it back. So you are actively receiving. That's why we call it accepting. We could say you received a punch to the head, but you didn't want it, you didn't ask for it. Or someone sends you flowers, but you're actually allergic to them. So there's a gift, there's an action, but do you want it? It's only a service if you want it. You know, I always used to tell my dad when I was growing up, oh, look, these are on discount. This CD's on discount. He's like, yeah, but do you like that music? It's only a deal. It's only good if you want it. So service is the same. If we're preaching on the street, telling people how they should live their life and live their relationships, we're not in service, because people haven't signed up for that. But if they've signed up for it and they're wanting it, then that what you're seeking is seeking you, is in balance and meeting. So I found that interesting that Pete highlighted that point that you shared about neediness and then finding it difficult to. So there's definitely, I would say, something in that to inquire for all of us, and you particularly in that case. And then this notion of receiving, when I noticed, Dr. Betty Martin teaches the wheel, and in that process, it's noticing, trusting, valuing, and communicating from the inside. So on an embodied level, what it is that we want. And if somebody's willing to give us that, then they're in service and we're in accepting. And the accepting part is the conscious receiving. It's receiving consciously because I say yes to the parcel. I say yes. Oh, thank you, Julian, for sending me this. I say yes to the flowers, or whatever it is that's offered us, because we're conscious and we value, not conscious, but we're aware that this is something I want. Therefore, it is serving me. Therefore, I accept. Whereas receiving might be passive. And a lot of activity that happens between lovers is a projected hope or wish, or they've seen a certain type of touch or a certain type of massage that they think we like. And we're so grateful, or we don't want to complain, and we accept unconsciously. So therefore, just receiving this thing. And I said on another call, when I heard that this, I realized how many times I've said yes to things that were a no when I should have authentically said no, and how many times I've said no to things that I didn't give myself permission to say yes. And in that moment, I thought about 83% of human activity and endeavor, doing stuff for others or accepting stuff that we don't really want, is wasted human life force. And oh my gosh, how much of our life force energy and how productive and how beautiful life could be if we were taught. We're not taught these things, supported to be able to express a simple yes and no. Many adults go to their grave not being able to authentically draw a line and say no to things because of fear of being impolite or being rejected and falling out of belonging. So yeah, I get very passionate about these topics, Pete. It's good, our yeasty brew. So yeah, I just wanted to add those things, and we've gone over time, so apologies for that. Would you all like JP question?
We started a bit late.
Okay.
So is everyone fine to go on for another 10 minutes?
Yeah.
All right.
So JP.
Okay, so if it's okay with you, I would like to share a text that you reminded me of when you were talking about the unconditional love. And it's a very short text. And before I go to the text, there's something that I believe you, Pete, were mentioning about these dimensions of having the Shiva and Shakti in us. And one of the things that I've been noticing more and more is that in the past, I was rejecting my masculine side. And because I always felt that the feminine side was more alive in me, and there was a rejection. And by embracing both sides, there's a different relationship with myself, my body, my mind, my heart, but also with the outside. When I'm communicating with women, with men, there's a different relationship now because I'm not rejecting like half of me, and it makes a huge difference. And I'm really glad that you brought this subject of kind of not rejecting and kind of bringing both alive, because they are both important. And I think, Pete, you were giving examples when the feminine side of being the receiver it really changes. So I'm really glad that I am embracing these two poles and not rejecting. And if I may, then I'll read this, which I think it's really related with this subject. And this is a text from Courtney Walsh, and it goes like this. Dear human, you've got it all wrong. You didn't come here to master unconditional love. This is where you came from and where you will return. You came here to learn personal love, universal love, messy love, sweaty love, crazy love, broken love, whole love, infused with divinity, lived through the grace of stumbling, demonstrated through the beauty of messing up often. You didn't come here to be perfect. You already are. You came here to be gorgeously human, flawed and fabulous, and rising again into remembering. But unconditional love, question mark. Stop telling that story. Love is truth. Doesn't need any adjectives. It doesn't require modifiers. It doesn't require the condition of perfection. It only asks you to show up and do your best, that you stay present and feel fully, that you shine and fly and laugh and cry and hurt and heal and fall and get back up and play and work and live and die as you as in all capital letters. It's enough. It's plenty.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Cool.
I'll share it in here on the chat.
Thank you. We haven't heard from our Shakti, Uta. Uta, do you have any comments, response, question, or
Yeah,
share?
I had a comment. It was already pretty early on about this neediness. Because I actually did resonate very much with these three states, and I really feel very strongly my longing to that third state and to meet the third state, being able to live it and also meet it in a man. And when it was talked about neediness, and also Sandro, when you said, yeah, I'm like this more female, and it always sounds like there's something wrong in the females with the neediness and these kind of things. What I actually can resonate, I recognize very much the neediness in myself, especially lately, what I get very aware of, that actually this neediness kicks in when the polarity is not met. And then, because if it's met, there is no neediness. There is absolutely no neediness. So, and as this is sort of the like the habitual patterning that it's not met, as you said, it's the second state. That's normal. We are all equal, and we have to adapt to each other. So this neediness is naturally constantly triggered, because actually a natural need, which doesn't come from history or whatever, it's not met. That's what I wanted to share. It's because I really feel it very alive, that there is a neediness which comes from me, and I have absolutely to take care. But then there is another one. It's just like, wow, there is a big need not met.
Yeah. I think it's really, really important what you're sharing, Jutta.
Yeah, me too.
I know in myself, I can see this is one of the ways in which I've changed, because rather like Larry said at the beginning, in my relationships earlier in my life, I would always feel that sense of being strangled when I felt this neediness from the women. And then I basically got to a point where I was like, no, I want to be spiritually free. And I was like, well, maybe I'm just never going to be able to find that or live that with a woman, because women are so needy or women are so emotional. And I just think this is one of the major ways in which the male ego, and also it's patriarchy, it's you know, as we know, and also spiritually, you know, the feminine principle has been denied and repressed. And what I've come to appreciate more and more is that there's, as you said, there's an authentic need in the feminine. See, and so yes, there is the more egoic need for security and comfort, and you know, but what we as men need to recognize and open to is that Shakti longs to be seen. Shakti needs the attention of Shiva, because Shakti is the dance, the display, is beauty. And so it's, I feel it's very important for us as men, especially if we're evolving men who also want to reach into what could be the third stage, is because it can trigger us when we feel that demand from the feminine, from Shakti. Hey, where are you? You know, give me your attention. And if we're still as a man in that more second stage mode, it'll be like, oh no, you're being demanding, you know. But if we actually, if us as men, if we actually refrain from that projection, oh, it's just the woman's ego, you know, and actually are more interested in like, well, what is it? How do you feel? How do you feel that I'm pulling away from you, withdrawing? What are the ways in which I'm being less than love?
Yeah,
and then as you say, then as you say, the Shakti, the woman, the feminine, can relax deeply, you know, because that attention, that love is being given. And,
because this neediness is it's absolutely being in a very unsafe place. It's the neediness, for not being in an unsafe place. And which is like makes sense.
Can I say, if we as men, we're talking in this binary way, but I've stated many times I don't mean it in such a binary way, but my experience as a man, as a heterosexual man, as I've matured, I'm 41 now, I feel I've only just grown up in the last few years of my life, honestly. But embodiment for me has brought some maturation in that when we have a felt sense of clarity, if the mind is very good at reducing things, but it will never find wholeness. You can't get postage stamps and stick them on the wall and build wholeness. No matter how many millions of stamps you stick to the wall, there'll never be a sense of wholeness. So that rational brain, which is identified predominantly as masculine, but if we're very left-brained, reductionistic, scientific, and we pick everything apart, it never gives us a sense of safety. We can't embody a sense of safety or felt sense clarity. And our female partners, if it's a female partner, will pick that up and never feel safe. And we might label them as needy, but they're not actually being seen. If you use your language, Pete, of the Shakti, we all long to be seen as we feel ourselves to be. Well, if we don't feel ourselves to be anything because we've lost our feminine pole within us, then the embodiment of the feminine over here, our Shakti partner, if we're a hetero couple, is identifying this ability to cut and reduce and explain and justify and understand, and the man is lacking their felt sense pole, then the woman's feeling this absence in the man and it's not safe. And I think this is a big part of the polarity dance that's missing, is do we feel fully seen by each other and seen as we feel ourselves to be? And if we don't feel ourselves to be, because we're more in doing and knowing and thinking than feeling and being, the Shakti in this case will not feel safe. And therefore their unconscious strategy will be to check out that safety through strategies which get labeled as neediness. And actually it's a calling to step up, step in, and be fully present to her beauty, physical, energetic, emotional, polarity wise, of the harmony and the felt sense of all things and the interrelationship, when most of us men, if we're honest, are not comfortable in our, and we've been schooled out of feeling, literacy, and being, and into doing, to produce, to create wealth, to succeed, to get on, to have, in order to be. And we're missing our felt sense of being, and I think that's deeply unsettling for and I see in my own relationship where I felt a partner of mine was very needy, and I can honestly say I wasn't fully present to my felt sense of being, so of course they're not going to feel safe in my presence, and that, so yeah, I wanted to add that I acknowledge Uta's point, and I think it's true.
Yes. Which does, of course, not take away the responsibility we have to take for everything. As you said before, it's like, okay, if the need is not met, then just let it go and root in yourself and attract. But also, I think, on the other hand, or this is what I experience, I am part of creating that man through my consciousness. I cannot stay here and say, I wait until the perfect man arrives. That's not possible. So it's like the responsibility then would really getting very clear about this neediness, dropping it, standing on my own and creating that man. It's because that's, there is, I think, where we have both the same responsibility. It's because we are stepping into something new again, and
yeah, well said. It's a co-creation, isn't it? And within body poem, there's a saying, the modality of body poem: the more you can be you, the more I can be me. So in any relationship, the more I can rest in and reference from my core authenticity, creativity, love, and expression, be natural, then the more we can do that for each other, the more permission we give each other. And then, as you say, you co-create the man of your dreams, you co-create your life of your dreams, and you co-create the relating. We should focus on the quality of relating rather than the exterior images of difference, I feel, and focus more on the relating than the relationship. Yeah,
exactly. This is like being really free. Hallelujah.
Stage three, hallelujah. Yeah, cool. So we got there a little bit over time, but we sorted it all out.
You see, all we needed was one Shakti. It was very
one drop of Shakti sorts it all out. Thank you all so much. Do we want to share one closing word of what we notice inside ourselves now? Let's do this for completeness. We've stayed this long. I invite you to tune back into your felt sense.
I would like to, so sorry, I would like to say something. I find it really amazing that of you men would share freely with having only one woman. I think that is, or with a woman present. I think that's, I was considering the part. I think this actually pretty amazing. Just want to acknowledge.
Sorry, Uta, I couldn't hear you.
No?
Did everyone else hear her? It might be.
I just wanted to let it be.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to acknowledge that it was actually a man group with one woman, and I found it pretty amazing how freely you guys would share. I wanted to acknowledge. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We love you, Uta.
Yes, I love you too. Oh God, I'm so happy I came.
Yay.
All right. I hope you come to the future sessions.
Yeah, of course. The last one I didn't come because you started late.
late. Yeah, it was our fault.
Yeah.
And really good to meet you, Alexandra. And I hope you join us again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man.
Thank you so much for this time.
Same Zoom code and running up to the 21st of March. And then after the retreat, I think we're going to carry on, aren't we, Pete?
I think we might.
Yeah. Getting juicy.
Please do.
Please do. Yeah. So I invite us to share one word of what we're noticing if we turn our attention inwards for a moment. I see a lot of smiley faces. So if that smile
Gratitude.
handed gratitude.
Radiance.
Gratitude, radiance, release, grateful. Grateful, gratitude, release, radiance. In grateful gratitude, we release radiance.
With an open heart.
With an open heart. There we go.
Excellent.
Well done,
All right.
people. Lots of love to you all. See you next week,
Yeah.
maybe.
Ciao.
Amazing.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Lots of love.
Thank you.